Do you remember these beads from a recent video? Well, I decided to use some of these to make a bracelet. I have an after-hours social event to go to pretty soon for all the vendors at a store that I'm in. Some of you may know about my booth, Vintage Vicky, in a store here in Kingsport, Tennessee called Just Stuff. I went through these beads and pulled out some of them along with a few other components. Not too many though. You can see there's not a whole lot of beads and components to work with. I'm going to be using some 49 strand wire, 0.018, and it tells me on the back here that it takes a size 1 crimp bead or size 2 crimped tube. I also have my crimp tool, a few clips, and just a small piece of wire. It's just a scrap piece that I had left over off of a spool. As I said, I have these glass beads with a silver metallic, kind of getting in the Christmas spirit here, and a few other beads. I have these round beads in 3 different sizes, and these tubes, aluminum tubes, they have a fairly large hole. And then I have some just, various sizes of round beads and a couple of bead caps, a couple of daisy spacers, and a lobster clasp, a small one, and a closed ring for the clasp. A couple of other spacer beads in here too, but not a whole lot. I'm not sure where I found these. I've had them in my stash for a long time, but if I can locate something similar, I'll put it in my Amazon affiliate store for Avante jewelry. So I'll see if I can hunt these up. You might need a ruler to cut your wire and some scissors, but as I said, I'm just going to use this scrap piece. Let's just put a clip on the end. An alligator clip is what they're called. I did play around a little bit before this video because I had a little bit of trouble with the tubes that I have because the hole's fairly large. Some of these come a lot daintier than what I have, but I wanted to work with what I have, so let's see what we can do here. I have 3 of the larger beads. Let's take a look at the size. The largest one is 10 millimeter. The medium size is 6. And the smallest one I'm going to guess is 4. Yes, 4 millimeter, just to give you an idea. And then I have some round silver beads, silver plated beads, and I've got a 5 millimeter and a 3. And then I have this tiny little spacer bead. It's about a 4. I have a daisy spacer. That's 6. I'm sure your beads will be different from mine, along with all your spacer beads, and that's just fine because my videos are for what? For ideas and inspiration. Take what I share with you here and put your own spin on it. So I have this bead right here, and I think I'm going to put the smallest of my round beads. Kind of do this over here so you can see it better. Put a small round bead, and then one of these little spacer beads, just to add a little bit of texture, and then another small round bead. I think you'll see by the time we're done that this is a really fast and easy bracelet. So once you get your pattern down that you like, it won't take any time at all to make this. Let's go ahead and put some on the other side. Do the same thing on the other side. Again, using my clips so my beads don't fall off, because that wouldn't be any fun. We don't want to lose our beads. Oops, as it just fell off. Here's a tip for you. I have a wrist support here, right at the edge of my mat. So I rarely lose any beads on the floor because that's my stopper. Plus, it makes it a lot more comfortable for my hands and my wrists. Where were we here? I had this little spacer bead and then another small round bead, and then we'll take a look at it. This is what we have so far. Pretty simple. It's time to add another round bead, and this one has silver metallic. I thought it looked kind of Christmassy. And then I'm going to go ahead again with the smallest of my round beads. For those of you who don't know, I have this little kit of assorted size beads and you'll find that in my Amazon store. Small round bead. This time, let's go with the smallest of the red and silver metallic bead, and then another small round bead. This is what we have so far. I just changed it up a little bit with the little round bead right here. And I'm going to put the clip back on this end, make sure it's secure, and pick up again on the opposite end and kind of do the same thing. I've got this part. It's time to add the round bead, the largest round red and silver metallic bead. And then a small round bead. Well, they're all small, but the smallest of the small round beads. Okay, and the red and silver metallic and a small round bead. So let's take a look at this. This is what I have so far. You can make it any way that you would like. And a lot of it depends on what size you're making, because you kind of have to do a little trial and error. You have to experiment a little bit to figure out how many beads you need to get the length that you want. So now that we're here, it's time to start thinking about adding the tube bead to each end. And I did run into an issue with this. I think I mentioned it, that the hole's pretty good size in these tube beads. I wish it was smaller, but it's just what I have. So I decided to try to disguise that hole a little bit. As I said, I played around just a little bit because I was having trouble with those large holes in my tube beads. So this is what I did. After the small round bead, I'll zoom in. After the small round bead, I added a daisy spacer, and then the largest of the round beads that I have, and then the tube bead. I'm trying to hide that large hole. And because of that, I'm going to add another larger round bead at the end. I'm going to stop there for now and finish off the other side. Again, it really depends on the beads that you're using and how it happens to fall on your wrist. Okay, so I'm here, and so that's mimicking here. I need to add the daisy spacer and that the largest of my round beads, and then the tube bead, and then the larger of the round beads, the silver beads. Okay. I am making this one to keep, by the way, so I spent the time with it to make sure it would fit me. But here's what we have so far. We just have a few more beads left, but let's see here. I have this medium-sized red and silver bead, so let's add that. Then I have these little bead caps. Thought I'd finish off with that. There's a couple ways you could finish this bracelet, and we'll talk about those in just a second. But let me get this. You know, I feel like I'm missing a bead on here, but I guess not. I just threw some extra ones in. So that's what I have. I think it's looking pretty good. I think it's going to fit pretty good. Just have the clasp to add. But you can see here what I'm talking about. What can I do to show you? You can see here that I needed to work at making sure that large hole was disguised just a little bit. And that larger bead right here helps. At least I think it helps. And the daisy spacer actually distracts a little bit too. So again, work with what you have and see how it looks for you. Now, as far as finishing it, I have a lobster clasp. I have a couple of crimp tubes. I also pulled out 2 clamshells because I could hide the crimp tube or crimp bead inside a clamshell. Then I have the jump ring, and I guess I'm not going to use these 2 little round beads here. Let's set those aside. So let's see, decisions. I guess I'll just show you our options. I can either insert the wire through the back of a clamshell and pick up a crimp bead or tube. I have a tube in this one. Normally I use crimp beads. We could crimp this and hide it with the clamshell. That's one option. And it would pretty much, look like this, although the clamshell would be closed. Or if you don't have any clamshells, you can just pick up a crimp bead and and go through the loop on your lobster clasp and back down through, whoops, I lost the crimp bead. It went through my bead cap. Get through there. Oh my gosh, didn't think about that happening. There, got it back. Now, it's a little easier to do the first crimp tube than it is the second. So now I'm wondering, because I have to make sure it doesn't fall back in to that bead cap. But we could just finish it off right here. We could flatten this and it would be fine. Just make sure your wires are straight either way, whether you flatten or crimp it. Or the clamshell. What do I want to do? If we use the clamshell, we would attach the lobster clasp with a jump ring. Decisions, decisions. And since I'm just using a crimp tube, not a crimp bead, and I'm not hiding the bead inside the clamshell, I am going to use my crimping tool. I'm going to flatten it in the center, rotate it, and flatten it again. And then I just kind of rotate it a few times. But what we don't want to happen, I should have checked this first maybe. I don't want that. Oh, guess what? Yes, it went right into the bead cap. Now that's not such a bad thing. It's just that I doubt I'll be able to pull that off on the other side. In other words, I think the crimp bead might just show over here, or at least have a little bit of sliding on the wire. You could also use a bead cover if you wanted to. Well, I'm going to change my mind now on what I'm doing because I don't want to have to deal with that sliding inside there. So I'm going to just cut this off. I have plenty of wire. Cut this off of here. Throw that little piece of wire away. And this time, instead of doing that, I am going to give myself a little more room on the wire. And I am going to use the clamshell this time and pick this up, pick up the crimp tube. I've often said you can use a crimp bead or a crimp tube, and I'm just going to flatten it after all, because even if I crimp it, it may go through that hole. So I'm going to take this all the way out to the end, all the way to the end. I was changing over to the clamshell, and that's when I realized I was missing my bead cap here. Yeah, I missed my bead cap, but I have it now. So let's open this clamshell up a little bit and pick up a crimp tube. And we can just, this first one, we can just take it all the way to the end and just, you know, flatten it. Do it a couple of times. Make sure it's good. It's good. And then pull it down through the clamshell. And then close that up. And then I grabbed a couple of jump rings too. And then the jump ring, we can just open this up and put it right through the two holes. Whoop. Now I might have a jump ring that's too thick. I'll try again before I get a smaller one. I think I just don't have it aligned. See if we can get that. Okay, then I'm going to attach the lobster clasp. Close that up. Push the beads down. Make sure I've got my bead cap on both. And this is my last chance to make sure my pattern is the same. It was different here and here intentionally, and then I added the small round bead there. So let's go ahead and go through the back side of the clamshell. Pick up the crimp tube or bead, whatever you're working with. Slide that down. Just allow a little bit of flex. Make sure that's as open as you need it to be. And I like to use my chain nose pliers. Push that, push the crimp bead or tube, whatever you're working with, down into the clamshell. And then get your pliers in there and slide it down and then press it. And then check it. It's good. Okay, here we go. Here goes nothing. Let's close that up inside of there. Now, because I did try this on earlier, oops, I got a little bit of wire sticking out here. I know I was good with my beads. That's why I didn't really try it on so much. I need to trim this wire off just a little bit. It's sticking out. You don't want it sticking out. Might even use some embroidery scissors or nail clippers. Just do what you have to do to get that trimmed up so that's not sticking out, and close up around it. And then I'm going to use a small jump ring to attach a small jump ring, because I'm putting this through the clamshell. And you can add an extension chain if you want to as well. And or you could put a larger jump ring than what I'm using. So here's our pretty bracelet, very easy to make. I'll go ahead and try it on and show you what it looks like. There you go. Here's my little bracelet that I can wear to the party coming up real soon. And just imagine all the different beads that you could use for this. Now I'm going to show you one that I've had in my stash for many, many years. I had forgotten about it, but I found it the other day. And that's why I decided to make this. I want to show it to you because it looks quite different from this one. It's much daintier. It has a much smaller tube. Do you see that? How tiny that tube is compared to this one. And it has these crystal bicone beads. And I like these bead caps a lot, but I didn't have any of those. And the tube, how dainty, really. And I had pulled out some beautiful blue bicone beads to make this, but it was my tube bead that made me have to change directions and go with something like this. I wanted red for myself, but I was going to make a blue one on camera for you, and then if I had time, make the red one. But yeah, if you can, try to get something smaller than what I'm using, because I did have to work at trying to hide the openings on the tube bead. Let me lay it side by side. What a difference, right? But anyway, this is an idea for a very dainty one. And here's one with little larger beads and any shape or color that you like. You could even use tubing here, the soft rubber tubing if you wanted to, or if you don't want to use tubing at all, you could use seed beads or small beads of any kind to finish off your bracelet. But I just wanted to show you how pretty it looked, and I thought it had a lot of bling to it with the silver. So start gathering up your large baubles and beads, because I'm going to make some Christmas ornaments. This time, large Christmas ornaments for a regular size tree. So get ready for that. If you like this video, give it a like, comment, and if you haven't done so, please subscribe. I don't know when you're watching this video, but I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next week